Hi, it's Dr. Scott. Nobody but Jamie was able to come to my workshop on Friday, so I thought I would take a quick moment to try to nutshell what it was we talked about. And here are some of the things, I'm going to adjust this just a bit there. Here's some of the things that we ran down. Jamie's thinking about writing about some things that Viola Lasmana, Meili Chai, and Sandeep Roy said, if I'm remembering correctly, and she wants to write about finding your own voice as a writer. And so first thing that I said was, I think this is a really great idea, but let's think about words that could go in your subtitle. And I do require you to have a subtitle, partly because I find in my own writing it's so powerful, also because it's so common, including on Medium, and it really helps you focus on, well, now what exactly you're going to say. So after saying finding your own voice is part of the title, colon, which you need before a subtitle, colon, courage, commitment, and intersectionality, or something like that, because those were three key words that I looked in her thesis paragraph that she'd already written and said, well, here's three of the things that get me really excited to keep reading. So I think if you think about title and subtitle as a brainstorming tool, then that can be helpful. Now, again, caveat, many writers don't want to do the title till the end, and I sometimes often recommend that, especially as a way not to have, to be honest, a bad title, because you really don't know what you're writing about yet. But in my own writing, especially pushing myself towards that subtitle. Now, what specifically are you saying about intersectionality? What specifically are you saying? Like finding your voice, what does that mean? What are the key words that I want to emphasize, and that I want to emphasize them immediately in the title, and then immediately in the intro, and immediately in the thesis paragraph? Some of you, I can hear you asking, wait, I thought this was Medium and I didn't have to have a thesis paragraph up front. Fine with me. Not all of them do, but in my own writing on Medium, I always put the thesis up front because it's, again, a focusing and brainstorming tool for me. Dr. Scott, what are you saying? What are you trying to say to the reader? They shouldn't have to wade through 8 paragraphs to figure out what the point is, because to be honest, they're not going to wait that long. Okay, so the next thing we did was, again, she had a good title and an excellent thesis paragraph, basic idea that had come out of her head about finding your own voice as a writer, and as a young writer of color, by the way, in Jamie's case. Second thing I said is, I like your thesis paragraph, but how about if we figure out what might be a brilliant beginning? Because I didn't feel like there was an intro. I felt like it was like, boom, here's the thesis. And of course, I like that because there is a thesis and it's on the first page, and that's much of what I'm trying to teach you how to do. And better than my first drafts often, where the thesis falls out somewhere on page 4 and I have to move it up. So there it was. But I also didn't feel that there was like that grabber beginning, because it was just like plunged straight into the thesis. So we brainstormed about, like, well, what if you took a fantastic quote from Viola Lasmana, or a fantastic quote from Meili Chai, or a fantastic quote from, say, James Baldwin, who wasn't one of the authors, obviously, that we interviewed, but who we referred to on numerous occasions during the last 3 weeks. So I was kind of saying, well, one way I frequently make a great intro, it's not the only way, would be to hit them with this complete grabber quote. As James Baldwin once said, in the fire next time, blah, blah, blah. And let that be the thing that really anchors them and gets the reader like, wow, this sounds good. And then hit them with, here's me, and here's what I have to say about my own journey and finding my own voice. They already know from the title that it has to do with courage, it has to do with compassion, it has to do with commitment, it has to do with intersectionality, something like that. So I'm just partly giving you the ways I think. They may not work for you. One thing I love about Shut Up and Write, and one thing I love about what all of the professional authors have told you in the last 3 weeks, is that everybody has to find their own path. And no two writers are the same, and it's totally true. But at the same time, it's also totally true that you got to, sometimes there are overlaps, and this is what works for me, and I know it works for many writers. Okay, the next little tip I gave her was one that I gave in one of my videos, which is, okay, because really what she had was a title and a thesis paragraph, right? And again, really solid, really anchored, and she's the only one that showed up for my workshop, so she might have a head start on some of you who haven't really started yet. But then I said, okay, well, now we don't have anything else. So that was it. There was no like page 2, page 3, page 4. There was just the first paragraph and a title idea. So I said, well, if it was me, I would be getting out my little, what I call pile of quotes, although I guess it's more like a file of quotes in the digital age. And I would say, okay, I know I want to use these 3 quotes from Mei Li Chai, and I know I want to use these 3 quotes from Viola Lasmana, and I'm probably wanting to use like these 3 quotes from Sandeep Roy or whoever, and I'm not even sure I have the right authors for her. And by the way, nobody said you had to use 3, but that's who's in her head as having taught her something important about how to find her voice that she really wants to speak to. So I would take all these quotes and I would put them, I would just literally list them out on the page right under that big first paragraph I've got, without expecting that they're connected yet, without expecting that they're in order yet, and without expecting that I'll necessarily use all of them, because 9 is already sounding like, whoa, that's kind of a lot, maybe, right? Maybe not. And then I'd start pushing them around and say, oh, I think this Mei Li Chai quote is the one that I want to use first. And then maybe I want to go to this thing that Viola Lasmana said. Oh, no, maybe I want to start with the Viola Lasmana quote. So I would be playing with the beads on my string before I put them on the string. I do like to think of this as stringing a necklace with beads. And the first thing you do is get out all the beads and pour them out on the table and say, okay, I got like this bead and 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 this bead, and then figure out how I'm going to string them together. Then, once I've got them all lined up, the stringing together is just me basically explaining to my audience, why do I want you to pay attention to this quote from Viola Lasmana? Who is Viola Lasmana? Why was it so resonant with me? How does this intersect with my own experience? And now here comes this quote from Mei Li Chai. Who's Mei Li Chai? What do I want you to know about her? Why am I showing you this after Viola Lasmana? How do they fit together? So I'm just kind of providing the connective tissue. And again, if Jamie doesn't want to do it this way, that's fine. It's just me trying to be helpful and discussing my own process the way all these other writers have discussed theirs. Okay, so third, it was interesting to me because I know that Jamie is interested in writing about her own life and her family's experience, that she wasn't immediately saying that that's what she was going to do. And she's actually not thinking that she will. So she probably is going to just focus on responding to and commenting on what she learned from these other writers without necessarily going into the story of her grandma or what happened to her in middle school or whatever other personal experience that she might want to bring in. But I do want to say that, of course, you could do that. That might even make a great intro, right? When I was 6 years old, boom, something happened to me that either like I lost my voice, I found my voice. That can definitely happen. Like one of the most famous memoirs in all of American literature, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, by Maya Angelou, who grew up in San Francisco and who writes about literally becoming mute because she was so traumatized by what had happened to her as a girl, and she didn't speak for years, not one word. Greta Thunberg, the great climate activist, is she 17 yet? 16, 17-year-old climate activist hero, didn't speak for years and then found something that she really wanted to say. And now she says it to the United Nations and Congress and the world all the time. So I'm just, again, in sort of brainstorm mode. And it's interesting that I'm quoting other people, not my own experience, because I don't usually write about my experience, believe it or not. For all my fondness in talking to you on camera about me, I don't usually write about it. That's all going on. Now, the last thing I'll say is that I started to talk to Jamie about how worried I am that you might not recognize yet, because you haven't started yet, that the next part of the class, Module 2, we're at the end of Module 1. Your Essay 1 is due on Sunday night at midnight. Lots of you will be tempted by various mental processes, including that COVID has us all messed up and it's hard to concentrate. Lots of you will be tempted to turn that paper in late. The late penalty is very light. I'm fine with that. What I'm worried about, however, is that you don't recognize that Module 2 is going to be way harder than Module 1. I mean, by design, I kind of made the first part of the class kind of easy. I mean, frankly, yes. Remember, I threw away that book that I thought was too hard to teach, that was going to be too overwhelming, that was too many pages to read, and I decided that we would have a fantastic time as we did, learning and interacting with these famous API Heritage Month authors and activists. And I'm so happy that I did that. But now I'm worried that you don't understand that you've got like 50 pages. I didn't even look it up, but it's a lot. I'm looking over my shoulder because I have the book. So we're starting on this book on next Tuesday, and you have to read the prologue and all of chapter 1 immediately. And I'm looking up how many pages is that. It's not it's not an insignificant amount. So you've got 41. I'm counting. You see me counting? 50. The original penguin, the original penguin, the original penguin, the original penguin. Ah, so you've got 44. You've got 46 pages of chapter 1, in addition to the several pages in the preface, the prologue, which is 1, 2, 3 pages long. So you've got about 50 pages, 49. And look at the print in this thing. Look at all the highlighting that I've had to do to understand what I'm talking about. And yeah, you have notes on this. You have discussions on this. And that's all got to happen on Tuesday. So I don't think it's the right time to let your writer's block overcome you. And of course, if it does, it does. The late penalty's not that bad. I do understand that we're all under extreme, unusual, and not even unusual, unique stress. None of us, well, at least nobody your age, has lived through a plague. And I've not lived through one like this. I did live through the AIDS era, but it wasn't like this. It was slow. It wasn't fast. It was very slow and very disorienting in other ways. For one thing, nobody could talk about it except queer people like me for the longest time. Everybody talks about COVID constantly. And we weren't locked in our homes, although, you know, there were quarantines going on of a different kind. So, I digress, but what I'm really trying to say is this is not the time to procrastinate. This is not the time not to start pushing yourself to find how do you break through your own writer's blocks. That's everything that these writers have been telling you. That's what Shut Up and Write is about. That's what the course is about. That's what I'm about. It also, at some point, has to be what you're about. So let's take Jamie's advice. Finding your voice requires commitment, courage, and intersectionality, which is, in other words, that you have to let these various pieces of you come together to speak with one voice. And you've got till Sunday night, so why don't you start right now? Put some ideas down on paper. Huh? How about that? Even if they're totally not ready, they won't be. Put them down on paper anyway. Send them to me. Send me an email. Send me an inbox. Inbox your peers. Like, please, let's just get started. Okay, bye.